It's Wednesday, September 6, 2017, and this is the Daily Caller Reports. Good afternoon, I'm Vince Colonnese. The Daily Caller Reports will be a show where we go over the top news stories of the day. The top story today is President Obama has returned yet again to the limelight. You may note that the press has framed it up as it's a rarity for President Obama to speak in public, but here's what we know. In 2014, President Bush said that he doesn't think it's good for the country to have a former president undermine a current president. When President Obama shifted in his case and President Trump took over, his inner circle said that he'd extend the same courtesy to President Trump. But here's what Obama said during the transition. He said, quote, "We now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds." Well, that didn't last long. President Obama broke his promise. Just 2 weeks into the Trump presidency, and since then, Obama has publicly criticized the president for these things: the travel ban, leaving the Paris Climate Accords, building the wall, replacing Obamacare. He called that mean. And now, ending DACA. How did he do that? Well, this week, of course, President Trump, courtesy of his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, announced that he's bringing to an end President Obama's Deferred Action Program. You'll recall that program from 2012. Was it 2012, I think? When President Obama announced that he would no longer follow immigration law and instead allow young people who had come into the country, quote, through no fault of their own, to stay within the United States, despite our immigration laws. Well, on Tuesday, when President Trump decided that he would rescind the deferred action for childhood arrivals, he said this: "To target these young people is wrong because they have done nothing wrong. It is self-defeating because they want to start new businesses, staff our labs, serve in our military, and otherwise contribute to the country we love. And it is cruel." He said it was cruel. Let's be clear. The action taken today isn't required legally. It's a political decision. A moral question. Well, that seems different. Kellyanne Conway is critical of the former president of the United States. She pointed out on Fox News today, the president said something very different in the past.
President Obama, through a memorandum from DHS at the time, it initiated this program and never intended it to be permanent. When he had 60 Democratic senators, Stuart, they did not take action.
And Kellyanne's not wrong. President Obama did say that. In fact, in 2011 at a Univision town hall, he pointed out that it is Congress who makes the laws and that actually the president can't do anything to change the status of someone who's set for deportation.
With respect to the notion that I can just suspend deportations through executive order, that's just not the case because there are laws on the books that Congress has passed. And I know that everybody here at Bell is studying hard, so you know that we've got three branches of government. Congress passes the law. The executive branch's job is to enforce and implement those laws.
Whatever happened to that guy? In fact, just a year later, President Obama announced deferred action for childhood arrivals, his amnesty for young people who arrived again through no fault of their own.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization.
In fact, Congressman Mark Walker, a Republican with the Republican Study Committee, made a good point yesterday on Fox News when he said, look, the program's called deferred action. What does that mean exactly?
The president did his job on this today. Just the very name, deferred action, means it was for a time in the future for us to pick up. So you can't have it both ways. You can't get upset with the president for overreaching or overstepping when it's something that Congress has the responsibility to do.
The point is, at one point, President Obama considered the very action that he ended up taking to be unconstitutional. And now, as President Trump has reversed it, he's coming out claiming that there's no legal basis for that. That's simply not true. And we can use his own words as evidence to suggest that. Now, President Trump, faced with having to deal with DACA, has come up with a solution that's not anything that his furthest right supporters want. What they wanted was for him to end DACA immediately, to live up to his campaign promise, destroy it on the first day. stop providing Dreamers with any sort of status within the United States. Treat them as illegal immigrants. Instead, the president is asking Congress to handle this, giving them a 6-month delay, telling them they have to take up the duty that he thinks they're responsible for. Oh, and by the way, that Barack Obama once thought they were responsible for. All right, I'm joined now by Amber Athey, media reporter for The Daily Caller. And Amber, I want to talk to you about Chuck Schumer, because today, as we deal with deferred action and how Democrats in Congress are responding to it, it's interesting to see Chuck Schumer out there and what he's saying. And what is he saying?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So today, or yesterday and today, Chuck Schumer called the president heartless for choosing to rescind President Obama's executive order.
Yes.
But in 2009, he said something a lot different. And what he said in 2009 was that he believed that illegal immigration is wrong. Quote, illegal immigration is wrong.
Yes.
He said the American people believe illegal immigration is wrong. And he said when he was going to be pushing for immigration reform, he wanted something that did not incentivize illegal immigration, which
Right.
is exactly what DACA does.
Okay, well, luckily, he said all of this on tape, so let's
Right.
take a look at what he said.
The American people are fundamentally pro-legal immigration and anti-illegal immigration. We will only pass comprehensive reform when we recognize this fundamental concept. The following 7 principles are all based on this concept and comprise what I believe to be the framework for a bill that can receive overwhelming and bipartisan congressional support. First, illegal immigration is wrong, and a primary goal of comprehensive immigration reform must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration.
Was that Stephen Miller talking? Because that kind of felt like Mark Krikorian maybe wrote that speech.
Right.
That illegal immigration is like a bad thing, and that maybe we shouldn't be having a bunch of it. Maybe we shouldn't be incentivizing it.
Yeah, that's like a far-right conservative position now, but this is from a leader of the Democratic
No, that's
Party.
actually that's the subtext for all white supremacy in the United States. Based on
Exactly.
like how everything is going now, that's what that was. You're
Why
hearing
don't
it
we
from
all
Chuck
just
Schumer.
read the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, totally. So Chuck Schumer's not saying that today. Chuck
No.
Schumer's changed his mind like completely.
Yeah.
It's not about some sort of comprehensive immigration reform to get control of illegal immigration. In fact, from what his statement today, it almost made it sound like they want to leave comprehensive out of it. They just want one thing specifically. What is that?
They just want Dreamers to get amnesty is the bottom line here. And it's really interesting, in that speech he said he didn't want to incentivize illegal immigration. That's exactly what DACA does. You'll
Yes.
remember the 2014 humanitarian crisis where we had a bunch of young people flooding to the border and the U.S. government had no idea what to do with them. They were treated horribly.
Yeah, and they were convinced that they would get permisos when they crossed the
Exactly.
border, that they'd be taken care of. And that was brought about by the Obama administration, which sought to push back against it. So the takeaway here should maybe be, if you're Chuck Schumer, kind of like thinking about what your position in 2009 and your position now is, if we're going to forgive illegal immigration, you should sort of understand that that action has consequences, that it's going to convince further illegal immigration in the future that might be the route that we take yet again.
Exactly so, and not to mention that Obama tried to say that this wasn't going to be an amnesty program, and here we are 5 years later, and we're finding out that's exactly what it is. All of these Dreamers who were told that they would be getting temporary protections
Right.
are now basically being promised free entry into the United States.
So this is pretty amazing. And by the way, here we have Chuck Schumer today. Here's the video of Chuck Schumer today announcing that he wants a DREAM Act immediately with no enforcement, no other provisions whatsoever. Just make all the DACA recipients legal.
President's decision to end DACA was heartless and it was brainless.
Amber, thank you for pointing out Chuck Schumer's hypocrisy here. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, shifting gears here, I'd like to talk about Hillary Clinton's new book. So the idea here, this is the way it works. When you have a very high-profile book come out, oftentimes the bookstores get them, of course, they're ready to sell them, but they're not allowed to. And this book is, of course, not allowed to come out until next week, which is its scheduled release date. But that hasn't stopped media outlets from greasing the tracks, getting the back door open at various Barnes & Nobles around the country, should they exist still, and getting Hillary's book out. And now we have all these excerpts from the book. So one of those experts is so interesting because so much of the Democratic campaign revolved around this idea that Hillary Clinton and those people who were supporting her, Amber, were sabotaging Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And now what we find out is that she was so sick of Bernie that she just hated it. She said that Sanders resorted to innuendo and impugning my character during the primary debate because he couldn't make a policy argument against her. She wrote, quote, nonetheless, his attacks caused lasting damage, making it harder to unify progressives in the general election and paving the way for Trump's crooked Hillary campaign. I don't know. I kind of feel like the damage was caused when it was leaked that people in the DNC were giving away debate questions to Hillary Clinton.
This is kind of like a I know you are, but what am I argument, where now she's claiming that Bernie was the one sabotaging her by sicking his followers on her on social media and, you know, always promising people ponies or whatever weird metaphor she used in her book. She just basically flipped the whole situation around on Bernie. It was a master manipulator tactic.
Bernie, I mean, let's remember where Bernie was during the campaign. Bernie was like insistent that he was the guy. Obviously, it didn't happen. He loses the primary gracefully. Like up until the last moment, you have Bernie supporters screaming their heads off at the Democratic National Convention about this. He ends up endorsing her.
Yep.
He like pledges fealty to Clinton.
Yeah.
And now in her book, she's talking about what a miserable drag he was on her campaign.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if she like really cares about the Democratic Party at all, because they have all this division right now between the more progressive people. They have the moderates like Tim Ryan and Seth Moulton and, you know, Joe Manchin, and she's just actively stoking that divide and those flames by continuing to attack Bernie and other Democrats in her book.
She compares him to a deranged hitchhiker here, says he's come up with a brilliant plan. Instead of the famous 8-minute abs exercise routine, he's going to market 7-minute abs. It's the same, just quicker. And then she's talking about the movie There's Something About Mary, of course, and she writes, then the driver, played by Ben Stiller, says, well, why not 6-minute abs? So her contention is like, Bernie Sanders was just dressing up things that she said and making them sound cooler.
Yeah.
And she's very upset about that.
Yeah, I never thought that I would sympathize with Bernie Sanders. This might be the first time that I've ever done so, because these attacks are just like, they're just mean. She just sounds like a mean girl.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is just... Yeah, I forgot my thought.
Well, she was. Here's the point. Here's the point. She's just upset that a bird did not land on her podium to celebrate her during the campaign the way it did for Bernie Sanders. So yet another thing that Hillary's blaming for the campaign loss. Now this story is crazy to me. So, you know, Hillary Clinton routinely accused by right-wingers and conservatives of just being a liar, an opportunist. Everyone around her is like that. Well, who would believe that her pastor is a liar? So all of a sudden we've got this crazy story now. Hillary Clinton talked about recently about how her emails that she was getting from the Reverend Bill Shillity were like so important to her. And the one that she got the morning after she lost the election was like, look, even Jesus went through Good Friday. Even Jesus, like he goes through, he went through the resurrection, and on Sunday he rose. And he made like a big deal out of like this obvious biblical narrative, the foundation of the Christian church, and how she's kind of like that. Like, this is a dark period for the country, but we'll survive it just like Jesus did. Well, it turns out he plagiarized the whole thing, and not from the Bible. He like plagiarized it from some other pastor. And now, consequently, we've discovered he's plagiarized like his entire book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing.
And all this advice he was giving to Hillary.
No one's ever really accused Hillary Clinton of being too religious. And so I think this kind of plays into that narrative. Well, Hillary Clinton's not very religious. She kind of had this pastor to try to boost her religious credentials. And then it turns out he plagiarized everything. So we're back to square one where, again, Hillary's not really that religious.
Well, he's begging for forgiveness now. So,
of course.
And, you know, Christian people will probably grant it to him. But this is Abingdon Press. This is who published his book. It says the following, quote, Abingdon Press initiated an extensive review of the book and was alarmed to discover other content unattributed by the author. Abingdon Press has zero tolerance for plagiarism. Consequently, we have discontinued sales, we'll remove existing copies from all sales outlets, and we'll have them destroyed, along with our existing inventory. So a dark period, not just for Hillary, but for her pastor. Things not looking good over there. Hillary Clinton still exists, ladies and gentlemen, and we plan to bring you every scintillating update. Amber Athey, thank you.
Thanks.
This has been the Daily Caller Reports. Hope you join us again.